Hello, everyone. Welcome to the interview module of our semester. This is going to be a lecture that I pretty much dedicate towards going over information for interviewing, as well as some strategies and talking about interview questions. So we'll dive into it. There are three basic types of interview questions that you're going to be asked, as well as one bonus type. The first one is skill-based, the second one is behavioral, and the third one is situational. These all have different purposes, and we'll get into what the bonus question is at the end because that's one that kind of trips people up, and it's becoming pretty common now to be asked these types of questions, which I'll talk about at the end. So what are skill-based questions? Skill-based questions are probably the most common interview question that you're going to get. This goes over specifically what your skill is, and the company who's asking you wants to know, okay, what is your ability to apply yourself? So they might ask you what your certifications are, what degree you have, what your education looked like, and maybe some of the classes that you took that would make you a good person to be in that position. An example that I'll use when I was interviewing for my current job, I got asked, my skill-based question was, what is my theoretical orientation for providing counseling? And I was able to talk about, I am a CBT counselor, so cognitive behavioral therapy, and I talked about, how we use thought challenging and reframing with clients to help build positive outcomes, and that eventually they will learn to do these things on their own without having to analyze. So that was my skill-based question that I was asked right off the bat at my job when I interviewed. So for somebody else, it might look like if you're in programming or if you're in any sort of computer, it would be like what kind of languages do you know how to use or apply? What softwares do you commonly use? Have you ever done any side projects that are remotely successful or that you might be able to share? Those are what basically skill-based questions look like. The reason companies want to know is because are you going to be able to do the job that you're applying for? The second one is behavioral. This one is a very interesting interview question because this is kind of, if there was one that was make or break for you that's outside of like what your relevant skills are, it's going to be behavioral. The reason for this is that they want to know how you interact in a workplace environment. So a behavioral question might be like presenting you with, how are you doing as far as like working with others? Say we work in a group environment here. Can you give us an example of like what some of your skills in a group environment look like? Basically, this is just wanting to know how do you interact with your environment? How are you in the workplace? Are you going to get along with other people? Things like that. And the reason that companies want to know this is because they want to ensure that you're not going to jump into the job and then be really hard to work with, or maybe you're not going to get hired and then jump ship like a month later. So that's kind of what the behavioral questions get into. The best thing to do if you're getting asked behavioral questions is mostly just to kind of focus on your professional attitude that you've been working on developing throughout this class. We talk a lot about, how do we present ourselves in the best possible way, and that's what we do with these behavioral questions. The last of the original three types of interview questions is situational. And situational is kind of that they'll give you an example of something a problem that you might face in the workplace, or something that you're expected to do in your job. They'll ask you to go through and explain how you would handle this situation. I'll jump into one of my interview questions again, since I work in mental health and substance abuse. When I first interviewed, one of the situational questions that they gave me was that you're conducting a home visit for somebody and you come into their apartment and it's very apparent that they have been drinking or using drugs. What is your first step? And I told them that my first step would be to talk to my supervisor about the best way to handle it, while also taking into consideration the fact that if they are very intoxicated or inebriated, that your first response should usually be to call 911 if it is at that level. So when you think about it, you have to rely on it's kind of a mashup of the first two. So situational really dives into skill and behavior. How are you going to take your skills and your behavior and put them together to solve a problem or to complete a task? So what I would say is, again, lean heavily on how you answer a behavioral or skill question and try to mold those together to form your answer. Again, you might be tasked with something as simple as like, I like to jump into programming because it's really the only other field that I know because it's what my dad did growing up, and I kind of saw how he would handle job interviews. So I'll kind of talk about what he. So one that they would do is they'd give him like a common problem, like we're designing this and we keep coming into this error. How would you go about fixing this or addressing this? And I couldn't tell you how he answered that question because I'm not a computer person, but I'm sure that there is a computer person on the other end of this lecture that is screaming at me right now. But yeah, so that's what a situational question looks like. And the last one that's kind of the bonus, and I really dive into this one because it is out there and companies use it on purpose, is an illegal interview question. An illegal interview question is not super well defined, but the way that I define it is any question that is not relevant to your ability to perform a job. Something like this, a common one that I see is ageism is a big thing with interviewing because something that's present on people's mind is that if you're older, like let's say that you're kind of in like your late 50s, early 60s, they know that your retirement age is probably coming up soon. And it costs a lot of money to train people. That's the honest truth of it. So they might ask you a question like, so how long are you thinking about working at this company? And you might think like, well, I want to work here, I want to have this job, but I'm trying to retire at like 65, 70. So right there, they probably just threw out your application because they want somebody that they can hire that's going to be worth their time training. And the reason that that is illegal is because it has nothing to do with your ability to perform the job, and it has everything to do with them trying to maximize the return on investment. Remember, if you're being asked anything about, a common one is your appearance, your age, race, gender identity, any of those things, those are not pertinent to your ability to perform a task. So take a second when they ask you these questions and just realize that what they're doing is technically illegal, but the best way to answer those, so like I'll have to role play this one out because I'm a little bit on the younger side, but like let's say I get asked that question like, hey, let's say I'm 64. Hey, we're interested in hiring you for this position. Are you thinking that you're going to be working here for a while, or are you getting ready for retirement? And my answer would be, regardless of what my retirement plans look like, I am interested in this position and I'd be willing to put forth my best effort every day because that's what I'm here for this interview for. So that's kind of an easy way to answer, to just reiterate like, what you're asking me is not relevant, but I will politely answer your question anyway and not give away any information. So that's what I suggest. Another thing that might pop up is you'll get some really interesting interview questions. And these ones kind of fall in between the lines of skill, behavior, situation, and illegal interview questions. A funny one that I like to see is how many gas stations exist in the United States. And there's a couple of fun answers that you can put out for that one. Some people will try to guess, some people will look it up. And then the best way to answer a question that you just possibly could not know the answer to off of the top of your head in that situation is just to say, I'm not sure what that is, but I'd be willing to go home, do some research, and call you back with an answer if that's okay. That's what they like to hear, is that you're not gonna give them a line of crap and say like making stuff up or trying to pretend that you're like this ultra genius that knows everything. They want to know that you're human and that if you don't know something, you're willing to learn. That's what those questions are designed for. It's to see that you're actually engaged and you're willing to be a part of this company and you're willing to do the things they're asking. So that's what we have this week. If you haven't set up your big interview account, please do not wait until past Wednesday to do this. If it gets to, I'll check my email for the last time regarding that on Friday evening, and if you get to Saturday or Sunday, it's going to be beyond that realm. Right now, working at a hospital, I'm pretty overwhelmed with everything that I'm having to do, so I really need my weekends to make my lecture video and set things up for the class. So please try and set your account up before Wednesday so that if you're having any problems, you can reach out and I can try and help you. Tech services is honestly the best way to get your problem solved quickly. I don't know the intricacies of if there's an error or anything like that. Again, just make sure that you're getting that set up and ready to go. But otherwise, your only assignment for the week is to conduct your big interview. I'll have that up and ready to go for you as you're watching this lecture video, and I hope everybody has a great week.